Throughout Mapreaders and Multitaskers, and even through our conversations, you pull apart theories, case studies, experiments that propagate these innate gender differences, quite convincingly so. I mean, some of the experiments are absolutely ridiculous, but why do you think, when we can prove otherwise, these theories still persist?
I think that there are a number of reasons for this, and one of them is that we've had, let's say, that patriarchy, as we know it today, has its origins in the move from hunter-gatherer societies, of which we know very little about, to agricultural societies. So that then what happened was, as agricultural societies developed, you've got class stratification and you've got ownership of women, which went with ownership of land. And so the result of that was that women became the property of men, and we still see that. We still see that today. I mean, why is it that some people still go and ask the father's permission to get married, or why does a woman wear an engagement ring and not a man? It's a sign of that possession. And why does the father walk down the aisle with the girl? It's a sign of handing it over from the father to. So these are all residues of our patriarchal past, and these are deeply rooted in our society. From the moment we are born, we are exposed to these kinds of things, and we inherit the patriarchy that is 10,000 years old. And so now things are changing rapidly. We have female prime ministers. We have glass ceilings being broken. We have men statistically are spending more time nurturing children than they were before. The gap is still wide, but it's narrowing. Women, the gap between male and female income is wide, but it's narrowing, and it's narrower in some countries than it is in Britain. So even socially, things have changed. When my father was my age, men and women operated in different spheres. You had a dinner party, and the men would go one way, and the women would go to the kitchen. Traditionally, the men would go and smoke cigars, and the women would gossip in the kitchen, kind of thing. Now the women smoke, and the men all smoke cigars in the kitchen. So we rub along together, men and women, in a way that we didn't do before in previous generations, and yet there's the residues of resistance to that. There's a backlash against that. I mean, I think that, to me, that backlash is one of the reasons, one of the expressions of that is the way we present ourselves physically, because we don't have other ways we feel this need to have distinctions between men and women, which is a product of what we inherited. And so the easiest way to do that is to have physical distinctions. I wonder if the return to stiletto heels and things like that are not in part and men having short hair and muscles are not in part a desire to have that distinction. And I think the kind of stuff that I've exposed in this book, the growth of evolutionary psychology, of books, these self-help type books like Men Are From Mars and Women Are From Venus, which reassure people about their own sexist attitudes. It's part of that backlash. Society is changing. It's changing rapidly, and it's changing as far as gender is concerned. And a lot of people are resisting that change, or they feel uncomfortable with that change. They feel reassured by the ideas that their desire to shop, or wear pink, or their desire to be dominant is biological. It's reassuring, and I think that's part of the reason.
And the media can be guilty of latching onto these stories and endorsing the idea that we're innately different.
Yeah.
Do you think the media is irresponsible for doing so?
Yeah, the media is always irresponsible. The media latches onto these stories not just because parts of it have a kind of sexist agenda, which is certainly is the case. But it's because the kinds of stories that news editors want they want a range of stories. They don't only want politics and terrorism and court cases. They want to soften their pages as well. And so they look for kind of lifestyle-ish news stories that can do that. And these lifestyle-ish news stories are being pumped out by psychology departments at universities. I mean, the classic case is the pink and blue one. So what happened at the University of Newcastle, some evolutionary psychologists did some research because they believed that everything is, all gender differences are innate, so they looked at why girls like pink and boys like blue. And they then got a number of their students and some Chinese students as well, and they had to press a button on the computer about color preference. And lo and behold, well, everybody's favorite color was blue, girls and boys. But there was more female preference for pink than male preference. So they said, this proves it. We are innately drawn towards pink. And then they put their thinking caps on, as evolutionary psychologists are inclined to do, and they went back to the Pleistocene era of our evolution, and they thought, well, why do women like pink? And they decided that it was because they were gatherers, and the gatherers needed to get red berries. So red berries, therefore a preference for. I'm actually not. I don't know any pink things. Maybe they ate flamingos. But anyway, this story and the explanation was in almost every newspaper. It was in Time magazine, and it was printed and published as if it was the finding of the double helix of DNA. So that it was complete, uncritically. Eventually, there was a columnist at The Guardian who did a column called Bad Science, called Dr. Ben Goldacre. And he looked at this, and then he went back and looked at where this preference for pink kicked in. And in fact, pink was a boy's color, mainly. And in many countries, blue was a girl's color. It was the Virgin Mary's color. And pink was seen as a kind of boyish shade of red, and red was a strong color. So he found magazines from earlier in the century where saying, if you want your child to grow up masculine, you must dress him in a masculine color like pink. And if you want your child to grow up feminine, dress her in a feminine color like blue. And there were lots of magazines giving this kind of advice. Now, so in other words, the research was utter nonsense. But yet the newspapers like that kind of thing because it's reassuring. And there's just so many examples of that kind of thing. Yeah.
I guess if we use evolutionary psychology, we could say that women liked blue because of blueberries.
Okay. That would work. Yeah.
And I think it's probably the one burning on everyone's mind is which is the smarter sex?
Okay, so that's a very good question. So if you measure smartness in terms of IQ, well, current IQ tests show that women are scoring slightly higher than men on average. 60 years ago, men were scoring slightly higher than women. Now women are. So if you take a genetic view, then maybe you can argue that there's been some amazing genetic mutation in the last 60 years of things that usually take 100,000 years. But the other way of looking at it is to say that what IQ tests measure are the ability to do IQ tests. They measure a certain kind of abstract logic. And girls are doing better at school, right? And it's not just in Britain, it's in right throughout Europe, right throughout. I looked at the figures in South Africa. It's right across the board. Girls are outperforming boys. And in almost every subject, including things that are traditionally male subjects like maths. So girls are more studious, girls are more competitive at school, and they do better at school. We will very soon be in a state in British universities where 60% of students are female and 40% are male. So if you wanted to put it like that, girls are smarter. I don't believe they're genetically smarter or genetically more stupid. the other argument that is sometimes raised, Steven Pinker, for example, loves this one, is that yes, the average is about the same, but there are more male geniuses and more more male idiots, and that is also starting to change. So when they've done tests for extraordinary mathematical ability with young children, it used to be that that boys outperformed girls 12-1 at the kind of genius level, and now it's 2-1. So in a space of about 30 years, it's narrowed fantastically. So is 2-1 the final stage, or is there something else going on? And what is going on is that girls are being pushed more in the way that boys were previously, and they're being even pushed in areas like mathematics, which were previously seen as boys' subjects, and that's why the gap is narrowing. So I don't believe there are more male geniuses. I don't believe maybe they're more male idiots.
Maybe.
But it is certainly true that on average, girls outperform boys academically.
Great. Well, thank you so much.